Hi, thank you for joining me. I'm going to read number 58 in the Arzian Codex, or the Resonance series. This is called The Quiet World, the condition that emerges when nothing is being forced, by Jason Gray. 12/22/2025, 6025 Anno Lucis, in the Year of Light. Arzian Arc QW Infinity Post-Loop Stable Reality State. The quiet world is not an event. The quiet world does not arrive. It does not announce itself. It does not overthrow anything. It does not begin on a date. It becomes noticeable only after noise fails. Most people miss it at first because they are trained to expect change to feel dramatic. The quiet world feels almost disappointing by comparison. That is how you know it is real. Why the old world had to be loud. Noise was never accidental. Noise was structural. The old world required constant stimulation to prevent reflection, perpetual crisis to justify control, endless novelty to keep people moving, and narrative churn to prevent stillness. Silence would have allowed detection. Quiet would have allowed noticing. So everything screamed. The quiet world begins when screaming stops working. What actually collapses? Nothing explodes. Nothing is conquered. What collapses is unnecessary effort. Systems that depend on outrage, shame, speed, fear, aspiration, and identity pressure simply fail to regenerate. They are not destroyed, they are outgrown. People stop responding. That is enough. The return of baseline reality. Before distortion, life had hardship but not hysteria. The quiet world restores baseline reality. Baseline reality includes work, loss, illness, conflict, aging, effort, and uncertainty. It excludes perpetual emergency, existential guilt, identity warfare, and psychological extraction. Life is no longer framed as a problem to be solved. It is framed as a process to be navigated. How people feel in the quiet world. This matters because many expect euphoria. The quiet world does not feel ecstatic. It feels grounded, steady, present, breathable, and undramatic. The nervous system stops bracing. That alone feels unfamiliar to people raised in tension. Some initially mistake this for emptiness. It is not emptiness, it is lack of manipulation. Time without violence. Time in the old world was used as a weapon. Deadlines, aging panic, productivity pressure, fear of falling behind, fear of being too late. In the quiet world, time is no longer hostile. Time becomes sequential without urgency, available without demand, and cyclical without repetition anxiety. People still plan, but they do not rush toward nothing. Time regains texture. Work after the loop closes. Work remains, but it changes nature. Work is no longer proof of worth, moral identity, survival ransom, or ego extension. Work becomes maintenance of coherence. People ask, what is breaking? What is needed? What reduces friction? What improves flow? Work becomes quieter, more skilled, less performative. Craft returns. Money loses its psychological power. Money may still exist for a time, but its grip weakens. Why? Because money's true power was psychological: fear of loss, fear of insufficiency, and fear of exclusion. When fear recedes, money becomes a tool, not a god. People stop organizing their entire lives around accumulation. Enough becomes obvious. Relationships without narrative pressure. In the quiet world, relationships are no longer stages. People stop asking, am I enough for you? Do I matter? Are we okay? Where is this going? Presence replaces performance. Conflict still happens, but it resolves faster because it is not carrying identity weight. People do not need to win arguments to survive. Repair becomes normal. The end of psychological extraction. The old world extracted energy through shame, guilt, comparison, aspiration, and fear. In the quiet world, these levers lose traction, not because people become enlightened, but because they stop believing the premise that they are fundamentally deficient. Mental health stabilizes not through techniques, but through removal of constant assault. Childhood without programming. Children in the quiet world are not prepared for war. They are prepared for navigation. They learn how to notice discomfort early, how to repair conflict, how to think critically, how to recognize manipulation, and how to rest without guilt. They do not inherit existential fear as a default state. This alone changes the future more than any policy ever could. Education as orientation. Education stops being accumulation. It becomes orientation. Children and adults learn pattern recognition, systemic thinking, bodily awareness, ethical discernment, and practical skills. Knowledge is not hoarded. It is circulated. There is no canon to defend. Government without theater. Governance loses its drama. No saviors, no villains, no cults of personality. Problems are addressed, solutions are tested, mistakes are corrected. Authority dissolves when no longer needed. Power becomes temporary and procedural. This makes it boring. That is the point. The end of the spiritual industry. Spirituality becomes ordinary. Presence is no longer exotic. Stillness is no longer a product. Awareness is no longer ranked. People stop seeking transcendence and start inhabiting their lives. Depth exists, but it does not announce itself. The body as truth again. In the quiet world, the body regains authority, not as an object, not as a project, as an instrument. People trust tension as information, ease as alignment, fatigue as a boundary, and emotion as signal. Chronic burnout fades because no one is rewarded for overriding themselves. The end of constant self-explanation. One of the deepest shifts. People stop explaining themselves. They do not justify their existence, narrate their choices, or perform coherence. They act, they rest, they speak when needed. Silence is not interpreted as threat. What the quiet world is not. It is not perfect, painless, conflict-free, static, or safe from loss. It is simply not distorted. Pain happens without amplification. Loss happens without existential collapse. Change happens without panic. That is more than enough. Why the quiet world cannot be built. You cannot engineer the quiet world. Any attempt to impose it recreates noise. The quiet world emerges only when fear exhausts itself, manipulation loses reward, urgency collapses, and the last question has been lived, not answered. It is a condition, not a system. How you know you are in it. There is one unmistakable sign. You stop asking, what should I be doing with my life? You start noticing, what needs doing right now? That shift is irreversible. Final condition. The quiet world does not promise happiness. It promises enoughness. Enough clarity, enough time, enough presence, enough ground beneath your feet. Nothing is being forced. Nothing is being avoided. Life becomes navigable again. When nothing is being manipulated, what remains is workable. That is the quiet world. There is nothing beyond this that needs to be written, only lived. Jason Gray. It's interesting because yesterday I used the word, after I had answered the last question, I said, and that is enough. And I was, feeling this all the way through reading it, because that is what life is becoming and is right now. So it's fascinating that he used that word also. Like I said, I don't read ahead. I did this as a cold read and hadn't read it since December 22nd when he posted it, probably. So that's just always brilliant to me how that works out through consciousness. But anyway, I'll put the link to the post for this writing, and like I said, they're encoded transmissions, so go ahead and read them if you feel led. And I'll put the links to all the places where you can find Jason's work. He is on a pause right now, so we'll see if he comes back. If he comes back, he'll be on Substack, and I'll include the link for that also. So thank you. Have a good day.